какви конзервативни позиции на менаџирање со општествени процеси. Северна Македонија својата институционална авангардност во овој домен веќе почнува да ја покажува. Неодамна го воведовме првиот дигитален асистент, наречен АДА, како важен елемент во имплементирањето на националните околу 52 милиони, а минатата година преку 110 милиони денари за истражување и развој. Овој раст во исплатите зборува дека во делот на традиционалната индустрија преку истражување и развој се зголемува свеста и потребата од градење на нови и иновативни пристапи во производството. Оваа влада го знае вистинскиот пат за економски раст и развој на домашната економија и за јакнување на низината отпорност на големи надворешни економски турбуленции и шок. Минатата година, согласно планот за економски раст, односно Законот за финансиска подршка на инвестиции и Фондот за иновации и технолошки развој, како и Законот за контрола на државна помош, беа исплатени над 45 милиони евра државна подршка на преку 645 компании за инвестиции, кои ја зголемуваат нивната конкурентност преку нови производствени процеси, воведување на технологии и креирање на подобро платени работни места. За сево ова, деновиве сме сведоци на пристигнување на уште една потврда за добрите економски политики. А тоа е и во период на кризи го подобривме кредитниот рейтинг од ББ- на ББ+. Веќе сме навлезени длабоко во процес на создавање на развојната стратегија на Северна Македонија за наредните 20 години, преку која ќе ги прошириме хоризонтите кои овозможуваат креативни идеи и ќе поставиме рамка за зајакнување на структурните, системски карактеристики во насока на градење на капацитети за одговор на кризи во дигитална доба. Влегувањето во ритам со овие глобални процеси на кои како држава сме изложени и градењето на потребните структурни капацитети отвара и една дополнителна димензија во потребата за непречено одвивање на евроинтегративните процеси и станување на полноправна земја членка на Европска унија. Потребата за соработка, размена на знаење и искуства никогаш не била понагласена, а за нејзино задоволување не постои друга алтернатива освен европската. Целите на европската дигитална декада за дигитално квалификувана популација и професионалци, за безбедни и одржливи дигитални инфраструктури, за дигитална трансформација на бизнисите, за дигитализација на услугите, се работи кои за граѓаните не можат ништо повеќе да значат од подобрување на нивните вештини и способности да дојдат до подобро платени работни места, а со тоа и до повисок животен стандард. И како што председателот кажа, ова е наш императив и немаме друг пат. Благодарам.
Благодарам. Добро утро. Никой не се смея. Добро утро. It is such a joy to be home. I was born probably half a kilometer from here in the local bolnica, and my street Debrecen Brodva is half a kilometer the other way. So it's always such a joy and pleasure to be here. As you can see, my speech is not very digital, but I wrote a couple of things, and it is always very sentimental to be home. I was here the last 4 days with relatives and friends actually from kindergarten days, elementary school. Goce Delchev, после беше Pestalozzi. So it's been just really a wonderful time. And the next 4 days will be all about Macedonia 2025, try to promote growth, try to see as much as we can help. There's also another sentimental memory. And listening to President Penderovsky and Deputy Prime Minister, thank you very much for your comments as well. But my first involvement, some of you have heard this story before, was about 21 years ago. I had just become president of Motorola, 150,000 employees all over the world with 40,000 employees in China. So as I'm running between meetings, my secretary is chasing me to say, you have an important phone call, you have to take it. I said, no, I'm late for a meeting. Take the phone call, and I'll call him or her back. She goes, no, this is a very important phone call. So I was getting a little exasperated. I guess unlike when I was here, you hate to be late. So I'm late, just take a phone call. So I came a little short. She goes, no, this is very important. I said, who is it? She goes, he's the president of Macedonia. And I started laughing. I thought she was joking. She said, no, he's the president of Macedonia. And I said, well, what's his name? So all of a sudden you catch yourself with a white lie. You say you're proud American, you're proud Macedonian, and here at age 46, 47, you don't even know the name of the president of your country of your birth. So I did go pick up the phone. I said, Mike, I'm not sure if you know me. My name is Boris Strajkovski. I'm president of Macedonia. We're not asking for anything. We're very proud of you. Not many Macedonian-born people are presidents of Fortune 50 company. Love to welcome you here whenever you can. I'd like to meet with my staff, with the Prime Minister and the staff. Just a couple of questions. When you look to invest in China or Turkey or Singapore, what do you look for? Because we really want to grow. So, Mr. President, I was there a month ago. I do not have any plans to come in the near future. I did come 4 weeks later. I was so touched by that outreach. Motorola helped with WiMAX, which was the first. Macedonia became among the first wireless countries in the world. They became really the love affair of how you can provide help, although from outside the country for the last 20 plus years. I will not go through all the comments I've made to the Prime Minister in many speeches since then, but the comment I told him is you have to love growth. I mean, from communism in many other countries, young people today, even in the United States and the West, there's a sort of a dislike of business. So somehow you have to put up with business. And I have a firm belief that well-run, values-based companies are among the best treasuries or best treasure that any country can have. As opposed to demonizing, as opposed to over-regulating, well-run businesses with high values, provide dignity of work, provide capabilities for the future. And again, if I was a politician, I would view businesses as my biggest customers. So there's the comment I made to Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. President. I just came from China. We used to have 40,000 employees in China. And Prime Minister Jamin said, Mr. Zafirovsky, tell me what else you want. Every morning I wake up, first thing in my mind is this year I need to create 15 million jobs. If I'm growing 2-3% a year like the West, I'll never catch up. China is always going to be here. The West is going to be here. Obviously, a communist country. This is not a pro-China statement per se, but just the mindset of, I have to grow. Hard results allow you to be soft. So the whole concept of, among many other requirements they have, he does not want to have people in the streets for the next revolution. But the view really was, I have to create the right environment for companies. And the other thing I told President Tchaikovsky, there's no country in the world that's successful without strong local companies, most important, but also the ability to attract foreign investment. It's neither either or. You may not love business, but unless you have that realization, you're always going to be at the outside complaining, wishing things were different, as opposed to controlling your own destiny. So that's point number one. I'll make 3 other points really quickly. You don't have to be a big country to be successful. I mean, there's a recent report, I think it's from The Economist, at the top, most prosperous 11 countries in the world. The most prosperous based on income per citizen. It's only one country above 10 million people. United States is number 8 or number 9. The other 10 countries are under 10 million. Singapore, Iceland, Ireland. They all find a niche, very different systems, if you will, from socialism to liberal democracies, if you will. But they all understand, from the president, prime minister, lots of the countries in the Baltics, very good social infrastructure, but they understand economic growth is absolute imperative to provide the opportunities for their citizens, not to have this brain drain, which we continue to have in this country and many other countries as well. Third point, if you want to grow, if you want to catch up, you have to grow. Some people may see growth as somehow being unnecessary. Are you going to go on a treadmill and keep going faster and stay in place? I think it's a wrong mindset. And again, if the West is growing 2%, if Macedonia is here, the West is here. If you're going 2.1% and they're going 2.2%, that gap is always going to be there. So you do not mindlessly follow growth, but what do you need to do to grow? 5, 6, 7, 8%. Education is always number one. You have to take care of your citizens. You don't simply grow by saying you're going to grow. And obviously we are very happy to welcome Robert Dorr, a friend of mine, president of the American Enterprise Institute. He and I will be speaking tomorrow with some of the scholars they are using. What does the United States need to do to reimagine the American dream? But every country needs to do that. Macedonia, I'm not sure if it ever had an economic dream, so I'm not sure if it's reimagining. But I would suggest for us to imagine what Macedonia can do. Again, very promising statements this morning. I shouldn't say warning, the qualifier I would say is that you've heard many speeches before. The difference between countries or companies or people or organizations that do is, do you do what you say? There's a bell curve in life, fortunately or unfortunately, but there's people who in bell curve, they actually get things done. Other people, there's many people in the middle, there's other people at the end that talk. You put them in front of a stage, they say good things, but then all of a sudden, do you actually do what you know you should do? It's not all about business. I'm very proud to see Kim from Chicago. He ran for one of the mayors in Chicago. But it's not whether you're left or right. I used to use Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton, Republican and Democrat. He was Maggie Thatcher and Tony Blair. They both did good jobs driving the economy above. So it's not whether you're left or right, but do you have programs that actually produce results, not only the pretty words. Same time, you have to help the ones that are most underprivileged, whether that's based on religion, color, people born in poverty. So it's not either or. I'm very proud that I just joined the board of directors for Special Olympics. There's 250 million people in this world with special needs, the intellectually disabled. So again, it's not either or. You pursue things for growth to provide opportunities to the most capable students, but you also really need to look at how do you help the most underprivileged in your background. Last point, again, I don't want to, this was not prepared. I thought I was going to say welcome, but then I saw my name to speak for 10 minutes. I said, well, I'll take the opportunity to say hopefully something that's going to be motivating, at least thought-provoking. Last one, our welcome activities. I mean, I welcome what Deputy Prime Minister mentioned. Again, I really encourage you to stay bold as you fight for votes quite often. Lots of times it's the easy decisions, the populist decisions, as opposed to really putting things for the long term. MK 2030. I mean, I think it's a wonderful program, how to make it real. I'm very proud of what Macedonia 2025 has accomplished. I wish there's been much more. We've accomplished quite a bit. And I would argue we have as good of a CEO of any foreign not-for-profit in Nikica, which she is doing. Hopefully all of you are going to come to the summit. Actually, somebody's going to come. Let's give Nikica a hand. We've made many great hires. Nikica is the CEO for MK 2025. It's been one of the most proud moments. Again, it wasn't my decision only, but for the board. So Nikica, thank you for all you do for the country. Digital transformation activities. Again, there's so many items. Just remember, being small is not a disadvantage. And for the ability to rally around few things that really make a difference. It's an opportunity in any organization, in any company, and I would argue in any country as well. So it is wonderful to be back home. It's always get very sentimental, and hopefully those comments are taken as spirit intended. It's not a criticism. It's not looking back and could had, would had, should had. We cannot change the past. The only thing we can do is looking forward. And I would love to see the country of my birth to be much more prosperous, and say much happier than at least all my discussions have been in the last 5 days here. So благодаря много и thank you for organizing this. Thank you.
Дали е окей? Дали се слуша? Супер. Ви благодарам многу за денешното присуство и пред се за можноста да бидеме заедно и да дискутираме на многу интересен панел. Но на почетокот ќе ми дозволите да се заблагодарам на председателот Пендаровски на кабинетот за одлична соработка, како и на Македонија 2025 за оваа тема која што ја актуализираат и сите оние одлични активности кои што изминативе години ги прават. Дефинитивно темите како дигитална трансформација, како иновации, како економија, образование, бизнеси се нештото кое што е многу важно, особено денес кога живееме во многу кризи, особено денес кога се соочуваме не само со пандемиската или постпандемиската криза, туку и со енергетската, економската, меѓутоа и воената агресија или воената криза која што го одбележува или го краси, така да речеме, за жал во негативна смислова време. Меѓутоа секоја криза, како што често знаеме да кажеме и декларативно, меѓутоа сакам да верувам дека е тоа е практично, секоја криза значи можност, секоја криза значи и дополнителни перспективи кои што не отвара да ги видиме, меѓутоа и начини како да се прилагодиме со цел подобро да функционираме. Јас нема да должам многу, бидејќи имаме навистина одлични панелисти денеска тука заедно со мене. Онлайн со нас ќе биде Регина Самер, директорка за стратешки партнерства и политики во Шведскиот инкубатор и научни паркови, понатаму физички тука со нас господинот Роберт Доар, председател на Институтот за предпријатија од Соединетите Американски држави, Весна Ивановска, генерална директорка на Центарот за едукација и развој, програмска менаџерка на Сивус акселераторот и представничка на МАСЕТ, и Владо Димовски од Универзитетот во Љубљана, факултетот за бизнес и економија од Словенија. Ви благодарам за тоа што сте денеска со нас и дигитално и во живо и што навистина ќе можеме да разговараме и да отвориме многу интересни теми. Председателот Пендаровски во делот своето воведно обраќање ја постави дилемата и даде навистина интересни погледи како може да се обезбеди развој во доба или во време на неизвестност. Па јас би сакал да ја прашам Регина, како навистина да обезбедиме дигитален развој, како да се посветиме на економијата, на стартапите, на предпријатијата во доба на неизвестност. Регина, повелете.
First of all, thank you very much for having me, dear Mr. President and dear guests. It's an honor to be part of this conference. Well, that is a huge question, and I think coming from the Swedish perspective, it is a combination of course, of larger investments in specific strategic areas, but also having the base of an educational base. And Sweden was very, very early, at an early stage in the 90s, made sure that everyone in school and even at work had, learned how to use computers, and so the digital knowledge in Sweden is huge, and this is a very, very important part of it. I would like to just stress and just give you some very short just information about Sweden. I love the previous speaker mentioning that being a small country is not a disadvantage. Well, we're in the same boat there. Sweden has 10.5 million inhabitants, but what just happened, and it's not just a luck, but we happen to be one of the absolutely top innovation leaders in the world, regardless of our size. So coming back to your question, if you could repeat exactly the last part of it.
Actually, the question is how to have a development, digital development, how to focus more on the innovation, on the incubators, on the growth of the economy in the period of crisis.
Okay, good. That was like 3 or 4 questions in one, but I'll try to answer it. Well, first of all, of course, and this is one of the reasons for Sweden being a top innovation country, is the fact that we invest huge amounts of money in innovation and research and innovation. So 3.5% of our GDP is invested in R&I. And what is important to mention here is that 2/3 of that comes from our industries. So our multinationals invest huge amounts of money in R&I in Sweden. 1/3 of that comes from our government. So the combination of sharing that responsibility of investing in research and innovation is extremely important. The other fact here is that when these investments are made, and specifically the money from the government, it's to have it divided in two focus areas. One is, of course, investing in important strategically innovation areas that could, make us a leading country in specific areas. In Sweden, for example, life science, we have InTech, the Industry 4.0, AI. When it comes to applied AI, there we are absolutely leading. So there are certain areas where the government and government agencies within that, of course, have invested a lot of money in strategic innovation programs and what we today call impact innovation initiatives. I can tell you more about that later on. That's one part. But at the same time, you need to, if you want to have a broad innovation ecosystem, you need to invest in the ecosystem. So I represent the industry organization for incubators and science parks in Sweden. And within our organization, and we cover the whole country, there's no other national platform that covers this in Sweden, we cover all incubators and science parks. So it's more than 63 incubators and science parks covering the whole country. And this is, of course, and we don't have 63 incubators and science parks that are all top-notch globally. But the ones that are not top-notch, they still have a very important role on a regional level. Because anyone in Sweden that has an idea, has an innovation, if it comes from academia or if it comes from a garage, they all have the opportunity to get support, to get their idea becoming a startup, becoming later on a scale-up. So I think there are two perspectives in this. One is to focus and invest in a basic platform for innovation to grow. Because you can never pick the winners. You almost never know for 100% sure which are going to be the winners, or what is going to be the success. So you need to have that broad platform, and then at the same time, of course, make investments that are more smart, strategically focusing on, deep tech and areas for the future where we really don't know exactly what to expect and who are the winners here. So on these two levels, it's very, very important. I think I'll just stop there so the others have some chance to talk to also. I can comment later on.
Thank you. Ви благодарам, Регина, за интересното излагане и за отличните поинти. Мистер Доер.
Yes, sir.
Can we divide
The time now before COVID-19 and after COVID-19, talking about innovations, talking about digital transformation, talking about enterprises. So it's important for I was a public administrator of social services agencies in New York City. I grew up in Brooklyn. The city of New York went through a very difficult, bad time in the 70s and 80s and early 90s. And I spent 20 years as part of the effort to rebuild the city and make it great again. And for us, it's not unlike coming back from a disaster like COVID. But the principles are the same, whatever adversity you face as a government or as an institution or somebody trying to rebuild a community, as far as I'm concerned. And what we did in New York was we focused on three big things that I think got the city going again. The first was work. We believe very strongly that in an effort to help people, the best way to help them is to get them into employment rapidly and quickly, and not allow our social services programs to incentivize them to stay on the sidelines. And so we had to be strong in requiring an effort to get into employment, and we couldn't allow our benefit programs to keep them on the sidelines when they didn't need to be. And that was essential. And what it turned out was that when you asked people to go to work, they wanted to go to work. And they did go to work, so long as those were the rules of the game. So we went away from a kind of top-down focus on dependency and government assistance to one that was focused on the path out of poverty is through employment and upward mobility. The second, and I would say that that's related to COVID in that, and we've had this struggle in the United States, during COVID, we shut down the economy in lots of places in the country, most of the places in the country. When you don't have any jobs, you have to provide aid to allow people to live. But as soon as that was over, we had to end that so that people could be encouraged to get back into employment. And where that has happened in the most rapid way is where the country has come back faster. So the United States is going through a period of stopping talking about the crisis and the difficulties and the challenges and the need for government to provide aid to let's get going again. Let's get people back to work. Let's free up people to move the country forward. And that has led to really remarkable growth in the United States in employment since then. So I strongly urge that sense of dynamism and possibility and potential in people that just allows them to find their own way instead of the sort of the heavy hand of government showing all the way. The second is education. We put a lot of effort in choice and opportunities for parents to break out of the restricted public schools in New York City. We allowed charter schools, more choice within public schools. That led people to, again, find their own way, using their own abilities, their own knowledge, and that dynamism created a real resurgence in education in New York City. We're far better in test scores. We're far better at graduation levels. We're far better at attracting people to move into New York than we were in the past because we freed the education system up to allow people to find their own solutions. And then the third was, in New York City and in other parts of the United States, it's important to be sure that the rule of law is in effect. That businesses who start businesses and work hard and play by the rules, that their investments will be protected in a whole variety of ways. That their ability to hire and occasionally to fire is not overly restricted, so they can make decisions on their own. That their businesses are safe and secure. And so we put a lot of effort into making sure that the quality of life, that the order of life of the city, not heavy-handed, not overly done, but we wanted people to know that if they played by the rules and they did the right thing, that their investments and their effort will be rewarded, not taken away from them by arbitrary bureaucracy or an ineffective police system. So those were the three things that led to New York City's growth. We are a technological hub. Those changes led to Google and other major technological companies coming to New York, making New York a kind of second Silicon Valley in the United States. But those principles are the same wherever you go. And I just would say one last thing. You do not know the extent to which the city of New York in the 70s and 80s had lost hope and felt that, urban America was dead and over and past. And yet, if you just don't give up and allow innovation, but also freedom to allow people to find their own way, and you say we can do it, you can really do what Mike says. You can become the fastest growing country in Europe. But you have to have confidence in yourself and in your people so that they can find your way. If it's top down, it won't work as successfully.
Thank you. Ви благодаря много за покренувањето на уште една тема, тоа е слободата како дел од важноста за економскиот развој. И тука ќе дојдеме до Весна, госпоѓа Ивановска, бидејќи беше споменато образованието, едукацијата. Ако не се лажам, ако пребројав добро, веќе 4-та година си во акселераторот како поинтензивно работи со поддршка и од фондот за иновации. Колку е важна улогата која што ја игра во промената, ајде да почнеме од културата во земјава за тоа како треба да се движиме напред, како да вложуваме во иновации, како да вложуваме во промена на економскиот модел, промена на погледот на младите, особено нивните родители, за тоа каде треба тие да се вработат или пак дали треба да водат бизнес и така натаму. Што успеавте, што направивте, кои се предизвиците, кои се проблемите?
Thank you, Buen. Ladies and gentlemen, it's really honor to be here today together with this distinguished guest. Obviously, together with Buen, we are the only locals, so probably our perspective would have a flavor of local challenges. And thank you, Buen, for introduction. I will be speaking today, I would say in multiple roles. As General Manager of Civis Education Development Center, it's ICT training center specialized for IT skills, business skills. I am 15 years part of the software industry as proud employee of Civis Group, one of the, I would say, best stories in ICT industry. And finally, I am in a capacity of deputy president of the MASIT, ICT Chamber of Commerce, for those of you who are not familiar. So it will be for me really like challenging to sum up all insights I have on this matter. But as they say, first things first, I would like to start with the perspective of why crisis and why geopolitical challenges the world is facing today should give us even more, should bring us even more bigger attention and should make us more extremely, I would say, careful when where we are allocating the resources that we are having today. And it is expectedly that policymakers today will put the focus on questions of economic growth and the question of competitiveness, which is, according to me, is the most important question, and it's closely related to education. This brings me to the definition of smart specialization, one term that we are discussing lately. It was actually introduced a couple of years ago here for the Balkan. And it's interesting that, and I really like this about the definition of smart specialization, that it is perceived as a tool to concentrate, that will help us to concentrate all, both public and private investments into an area which we consider is mass critical of knowledge, in terms of innovation potential, and in terms of capacity. And probably if we answer this question, what is the number one area where we should put all our resources in terms of, as I said, not only financial resources, but also our attention as well, our human resources, we are coming to the result of the first stage of the qualitative analysis that says that Macedonia right now should put the focus on 4 priority areas. And what are the 4 priority areas? Sustainable food and beverage production, value chains. Then we have smart buildings. Then we have electrical equipment and manufacturing parts. And finally, actually on the top of it, it is information and communication industry. And if I had only 1 minute to answer the question, the answer would be information and communication industry. Why information and communication industry? National statistical data shows that ICT industry demonstrated already huge resilience during the process of crisis, and not only survived, but also double, let's say, net export. Speaking in numbers, in 2019, let's say the number of total employees was 15,000, and now it's 20,000 employees. So basically, nearly 5,000 people joined the sector in 2.5 years. So you can imagine how intensive and how demanding this is on the side of developing talent, developing workforce. And I see colleagues here from our industry, ICT training industry, and I will be biased, and also the representatives of the academia, Faculty of Electrical Engineering, so Finky, Faith, all of them, I believe that this year we are facing record number of applicants. So there is a huge pressure coming from potential talent to join the industry. And I really believe that this is extremely important. I'm honest, and I'm not saying that each of them will become sophisticated engineer, but definitely we should use, we should take an advantage of this, probably the biggest shift in the history of workforce development. For me, this is number one priority, number one challenge, and number one area where all public and private, I'm emphasizing this, public and private funds should be diverted, should be focused. Later we will discuss other aspects, but I will conclude with this. Yes, we are today inspired to talk about digital transformation in Macedonia, but the world is talking about artificial intelligence. And we will no longer talk about how artificial intelligence will influence our lives and our economy. But probably the next year we will be talking what will be the role of humans in the world of artificial intelligence. And I will finish with this.
Благодарам, Весна. Веројатно ние и следната година ќе разговараме тука за IT, меѓутоа да се надеваме дека трендовите ќе следат побрзо и тука. Пред да преминеме со професорот Димовски, само би сакал да најавам дека слободно можете да размислувате колку имате прашања за панелистите, да се подготвите после ова. Јас ќе преминам, професоре, на две прашања, ако ми дозволите. Она што го започна Весна, дека огромен број од студентите тука се запишуваат на IT факултетите, како најперспективно. И да, Државниот завод за статистика оваа година веќе завчера кажа 91.500 денари просечна плата во IT сродните индустрии, тоа значи 1.500 евра, што говориме за просечна плата. Но дали лекот, дали решението, дали излезот е сите да се запишуваат таму, или пак секој треба да го бара своето место во својот талент и знаење? И второто подпрашање, бидејќи вашиот фокус е менеджментот, организацијата, како во ова време на несигурност или како во ова време на кризи, пост-ковид, меѓутоа и многу кризи кои што ги споменавме, е важна улогата на менеджментот и како тука дигиталната трансформација игра улога, каква улога тука играат фокусот кој што треба државата, меѓутоа и другите актери да го стават во иновациите и развојот на економијата. Повелете.
Најпрво, добар ден. Сега не знаем дали зборам на македонски или на англиски, ама ќе се префрлам на англиски, бидејќи цел панелот е на англиски. I am a professor by God's call. So I like what I do and I love what I do, and I'm really, how should I say, enhanced, what I do. So whenever, people from Macedonia, students from Macedonia, North Macedonia, come to Slovenia to Faculty of Economics, which is now Faculty School of Business and Economics, they come to me and they say, Professor, what should we do? And I say, first semester will be the most difficult one. So if you have a chance, find a partner. Previously I said find a woman or find a man, now I have to say find a partner, right? So basically, and that's the fastest way for socialization. And socialization for me, it's one of the key moments, because all of our lives, we are going through different socializations. Primary, which is family, then school, secondary, then job, and so on, another job, and so on. In this times, it's basically you have to be very active. And for me, coming from educational system, for me, education is the critical one. Because we do not get, creativeness, we do not get anything else from outside. We are getting that from the institutions. And honestly, although I'm paid by the university and so on, I think that we are obsolete. tremendously obsolete. So we have to change. And there are different ways, how to change, but because these are institutions, they fight. They are persons, in a sense, person, quote, unquote. They don't want to die. They don't want to transform because they are happy with what they are. To have a vertical, structural, hierarchical, and so on. And these are institutions that have been around for centuries. If you start, for example, Europe, in Italy and so on, in Greece and so on, Macedonia, basically we have these are institutions. But basically, for changes, that are foreseen and being foreseen in the future, these institutions do not serve well. And every year when I start different courses in knowledge management, in age management, and so on, I'm faced with the reality. What should I teach? At first we have programs which are structured, which are given, which are confirmed, institutions and so on, and I'm kind of cornered as a professor. What I want to teach and what I have to teach. There's a dialectics. So somehow I squeeze in the knowledge that I want to teach within the form of what I have to teach. That's wrong. I think this institution should change because educational system, and Robert and you, Vesna, basically that's crucial. For me it's crucial because that's the essence of creativity. That's what I wanted to say just from the beginning, and we can go on, and of course as a professor I can go on and on. But
May I make a comment?
Thinking about this education, because there was a second question, I believe, which I almost forgot. But basically I have to answer. Managing, I mean, is there a science? This is management. And Mike was a top manager for many years, so all the things, that the manager has to do and so on. But is this a science? Is it an art altogether? So is it possible to teach it? Is it the skills that you acquire? So what do we do? Usually we have the synonyms for management, like coordination, delegation, how different, and it's that and all that. So it's very difficult, when I was preparing for this roundtable, I was thinking a lot, what should I give, to the public? Because usually when I come to the class, I pray to the God and say, give the maximum of what you have today. Because tomorrow probably I'll learn something, I'll have more experience and so on. So basically it's an important thing, that you do, that you give everything, Not only as a professor, as a teacher, as a manager, but as a man, as a human being. And I think that's very crucial, that you give everything, Over the years, over the experience and so on, I found out one thing, that basically your character somehow defines what you do. The character is very complex. Also, again, part of the socialization. And secondly, it's basically to be a model, like Mike, for example. It's very difficult to be a model because then you have to be honest. You cannot act. Say, well, you kid, do not use the phone. And then, please, who's on the other side and so on. So basically, you have to be honest, authentical, and we are not. We act too much. We don't stick with our values. We don't stick with what we are. And that's very difficult because you can act for a very limited period of time and then you break. You cannot act anymore. You feel frustrated. That's how our societies became, frustrated in a many sense, many deviations, etc. So basically, I think we are challenging a lot of changes. Well, I wanted to say challenging a lot of challenges. That would be an oxymoron, really. But challenging, the changes and what way to go. And in nowadays, in societies that are so structured, our society is structured. So the place is for everything. For everything is institution. For everything is some kind of law, some kind of regulations. But do we know all the laws? If we take now a questionnaire and ask ourselves how much of our national legislation do we really know, probably all of us will fail. Maybe you not because you're a lawyer, but I know that I will fail by the Slovenia legislation for sure. Because every time, I'm asking, is this legal? I'm going to go with the moral compass. But I'm not sure whether that's legal or not. Because sometimes legality, it's not really the same as moral, right? Or ethical. So I think it's also the part of socialization and the changes, at least in Slovenia and Macedonia. And I must say that I was proud. I'm proud because I entered the EU and NATO twice. I told you, Robert, right? Once I was a member of the government in Slovenia with Slavko. We were the members of the government. He was for education, I was for labor and social affairs. That was 2004. And then in Macedonia, 2006, when I was an advisor to the Prime Minister at that time. And for NATO, 2007 in Slovenia, and then 2020, right, in Macedonia, when I was an advisor to Prime Minister Zaev. So, I think that's, for one life, I guess that's enough, Maybe I don't need to be a member of another government or advisor. But anyhow, so I will finish with this, that we are facing a lot of changes, about the dehumanization and digitalization. I'm afraid of that because when I entered the class in the first year, I always teach in the first year, and when I entered the class, and that is the 1st of October every year, and intentionally I teach in the first class, first semester. Why? Because I want to touch, the reality of the freshmen, Bruci, in our country. So basically, every time till COVID, when I enter the first class, there was almost 1,000 students. Faculty of Economics, we are attractive institution and so on. And there was a lot of buzzing going on, buzz, 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 and so on. Until 2021, when I came into this big hall, and when I entered, I thought there was nobody there, because nobody was talking. And I was scared to death, really. I preferred, to be buzzing, and being flushing and everything and so on. These people didn't talk. And when I came, to the stand, and I said, please, people, talk. Be loud, do something. And then I realized that they don't know each other. They are not interested, to a girl sitting next to him, which for us was the major purpose coming to the lecture, right? So that was really dysfunctional to me, because this is like a societal institution. It's not like that we're going to the graveyard or something. So I said, please talk, at least, make an acquaintance one to each other. So I'm thinking, and I will be finishing with this, this point, after COVID, you asked, Robert, about before and after COVID. I think there are major differences, at least in the behavior stance, at least in the thinking and so on, which maybe, and I hope not, and I'm wrong, that it will be irreversible to some extent. Because the psychological profile, at least I see with students, changed. So they are not communicative, social skills are someone there. And also these are, I think we were talking a little bit before, it's a big question, So we have to work on the rehumanization or re-socialization and so on. So we need the different profile, and definitely we need different educational institutions.
Thank you. Благодарам, професор Димовски. Господин Одуар сакаше да се надоврзе. Мисля, да, you wanted to say something more?
I was just going to add that this question of education is so important, but we can't be limited to educational institutions as the provider of education. The best education that we found in the programs that I ran in New York were in businesses. The workers who went there, if you have a well-run, a great culture, a profit-making business, they invest in the people, and they get that socialization, they get that education from there. And if we are narrow in our view of where education takes place to only be, nothing against educational institutions, educational institutions, I think we miss out on the huge potential of education that takes place inside thriving businesses. That's where, in fact, most people get the best education that allows them to get the skills to move up. And we found that if we had a person in front of us, a young person or a person struggling, a person coming out of COVID, who needed to get back into the world, it often was the best thing to do was to get them attached into an employment situation where they're working and learning in that culture and in that environment. And if we think the only answer is to put everybody into a longer-term educational situation, it isn't always successful for everyone.
This is definitely inspiring discussion. So education is the main topic. Yeah, great for us. I just wanted to add something that I think as long as we try to invent the perfect model for education, we are failing. We should invent how to invent education constantly. So when we are talking about transformation of education, we should actually talk about being constantly open and alerted what to change tomorrow. When we are designing our specialized programs, I believe, Vale, you are doing this as well, we are not always, we don't know the full list of subjects until the end of the year. So a lot of things are happening and are changing as we speak. World Economic Forum says that by 2030, 1 billion people should rest skilled. So 1 billion people should have something completely different. And that lifespan of skill set we all built entire life is shrinking more and more. And hopefully there is one good news on this, that a young generation, this so-called Zoomers generation, Z or Zoomers, that's the popular name, they don't expect that they will have one position in the company. They want fluid position. They want to change constantly position. And this is how they will learn. Learning by doing, walking the talk.
Interesting debate. I agree with the Zoom generation. Ms. Summer, you wanted to add something too?
I was just thinking about, I mean, in my ears, we're talking about different things here. One is, of course, it's important to, you need to have entrepreneurs, yes. And I totally agree, education is not for everyone, and entrepreneurship is maybe something that not always needs to be taught. It's more of, character and a certain profile. But to be honest, one of the reasons that Sweden is a top innovation country in the world and we have the economy that we have is because almost 35% of Swedes have some kind of high school education or university education. That's extremely important. And of course you need the entrepreneurs, the Peter that has a garage that repairs bicycles around the corner. But I think in this conference, as I understand it, is how to level up the innovation and how to level up the economy through innovation. And there, that garage that repairs bicycles around the corner, that's not the company that's gonna produce the highest growth and employ most people. So in this case, you need to have the ones that focus a lot on education. Sweden has 36 universities or university colleges that are public all around Sweden. And if you count in the private ones, we have 60 universities or university colleges around Sweden. And in Sweden, it's free to get a university education. This is like really, really important for us. So I would just wanted to mention that as also mentioned in the innovation agenda that came out last summer from the European Commission, we have the companies that will create the biggest growth and will be most important are startups and deep tech startups. And when I say startups, I mean new companies with a high innovation growth and with competence coming from the academic world in most cases. So these things are very, very important. I just wanted to also comment on one of the speakers that were talking, the professor that were talking about, certain skills. And I would like to recommend the inner development goals that has been launched. It's a Swedish organization called New Division that is presenting the inner development goals. So what are the inner, the profiles that we need to be able to achieve the sustainable development goals. So check it out. You can Google it, of course, inner development goals, and you can see. And this is based on what do we as individuals need to be able to support and to create the changes, the transformations that we need in our society to achieve the sustainable development goals. So that was like a side note, but also very interesting, I think, for you to know. So that was just my comments on what has been said so far.
Thank you very much, Regina. Одиме со прашања, коментари од публика. Да, повелете, господин Зафировски. Thank you. Дали имаме, да. Окей. Бидејќи немаме дополнителни прашања од публиката, навистина мислам дека треба да преидеме кон завршување, бидејќи следно е предвидено кафе пауза по втора сесија. I would just like to summarize in 1 minute, each of you. What is the role of the state? What is the role of the society, and especially the state, and how it can influence the economic growth, and what should be and can be undertaken? That's the first thing. And of course, one short recommendation on the topic from each of you. Can we start again with Ms. Summer?
Yes. So the role of the state when it comes to creating an innovation system is to enable for others to innovate. That's the role of the state. And in Sweden, we have had the triple helix model, and to be honest, it's quite an old model. We have developed it. We are now talking about system innovation. But coming back to the triple helix model that I think is still relevant for some countries, it's about the government, industry, and academia coming together and collaborating and creating opportunities for others, but also collaborating to achieve the transformations that are needed today to achieve the sustainable development goals. So collaboration and collaborating with the actors in a system. And of course, in Sweden, we have, when it comes to trust, usually when there are, we do these tests among the society and the citizens, there's a trust or about 98%. So the government trusts its inhabitants and the citizens trust their government. And I think that trust, to build up that trust, is extremely important. And also to have a dialogue, an open dialogue between the government, between academia and the industry. And I think that we achieved that very well in Sweden. So all the strategic innovations, the larger strategic initiatives are made in collaboration between our government agencies and the industry and academia. So I think those things, but the most important role is to enable for others to innovate. And how do you do that? And that's like one more hour session. But to enable for others to innovate, that's the most important role.
Thank you very much. So, enables others to innovate, collaboration, a dialogue. What are your suggestions, Mrs.?
So the role of the state obviously is to provide the rules of the game and also ensure that people at the bottom or the most struggling have an opportunity to get up to above the poverty line. But I think the choice for Macedonia is going to be to what extent that they don't allow the state to overregulate or over-involve in its economy. The extent to which they free up the employers and the businesses to employ and educate and nurture their cultures and their communities and to grow their businesses. That's going to be the real choice. It seems to me that the role of the state is a significant one, but it cannot be in the economy too large a one, or you will not grow at the rates that Mike suggests. You need to grow in order to be among the fastest growing countries in Europe and around the world. So we found, even in New York, big New York, democratic old New York, the extent to which Mayor Bloomberg allowed the businesses to just develop, and the way he celebrated their success, he encouraged their growth, he was proud of their profits. That leads to growth, which raises incomes for everyone, including those at the bottom.
Thank you. So not to overregulate.
Not to overregulate. That's right. You got it.
Trying. Vesna, your 1 minute.
Okay, I would definitely say something about our own responsibility as sector, as private sector. Regina, you've mentioned in your presentation, by the way, congratulations on everything you're doing with Swedish Innovation Day. I've been watching some interesting events, and that's admiring. And it's actually no news. You're on the top of the list of the most competitive nations. I think that it's 8th ranked. We're 82nd, so that speaks volumes. In terms of digital literacy also, we are lagging behind the European average, but that's not let's not discourage. I think that as private sector, as educational institution, as universities, as Center for Technology Transfer, we should definitely accept the role of active actors. I know that governmental authorities are the ones that are setting the course, and that they by modernizing or by introducing some policies and interference, they can change our attitudes. And I'm really looking forward for the government to change our attitudes. So the next year we can talk about how much money ICT invested in academia, for example, and made some transformative or some innovative project. For me, this is like an indicator of innovation, let's say, or innovation potential. And finally, all respect to academia, but innovation is not exclusive to academia. We have incubators, we have accelerators, we have small businesses, we have even a group of students with completely naive idea maybe that managed to attract huge investment. So definitely we should reflect more on this, and finally try to improve the investment climate. I agree that without money we cannot do much, because we are a small market and we really need that. And talking about money, I am the one that says that we need regional approach. We should attract regional investors, because that's the only way how to attract anchor investors, so other investors will come and the story will go on.
So wedding responsibility, active actors, wide aspect of innovation, etc., etc. So, да, повелете. Thank you, Professor Ekimowski. Adding the research and funding opportunities to the list, and Professor Dimovski. First advice was find a partner. What would be the second advice?
Then make the first exam, then first school year, and then make a diploma, and then, so on. So basically, a step-by-step approach is probably the best. But if I may answer your major question about the state role, what I learned as an advisor, as a consultant of the World Bank and so on, also as a public worker and so on, it's in small countries, state matters. You cannot differentiate the state and the businesses and so on. They have to work together. That's number one. But they have to be honest to each other, not to oversmart each other, which I've seen in Slovenia, in Macedonia, and so on, trying to oversmart each other. That's not a good approach. It should be coalition. But the coalition should be formed around the vision. So the vision, for me, it's very important to have in mind what I want to accomplish. And the president, prime ministers, ministers, and so on, the other public workers should speak the same language. And that's what I'm missing in these countries, in this part of the world. Everybody, it's divided in terms of political, in terms of whatever, and so on. This is not good. Vision should be long-term. No matter who is in the government, who runs each department, and so on, this should be the vision. And I think that's number one, I remember, if I may say a little bit, after 2004, when we were finishing our government, Slavko was also in the government, Prime Minister asked me to have a speech in Budva on these territories and so on. And I said, what should I say? We already lost the elections and so on that time, I said, I don't want to go there. You go, lad. And I went there and I started to say what we did in the government. We entered the EU. We entered IMF. We did this. We increased the growth rate by 4%, increased the investment and so on. And then the last sentence was, and then we lost the elections. So, whatever, but we did something, basically historical changes, and that was at the cost of the political capital, which is good. It was good for the country. And I'm lacking, this is basically in these countries, there's a lack of vision. That's number one. Second is what I think, as soon as possible, to go to the let's say, because it is not EU event, we didn't talk about EU documents, but coming from the EU state, I should say that there's a lot of documents about the innovativeness, about everything, so basically we have different, for example, I should mention in the EU 2030 agenda, which is, let's say, the driver also to all the documents in the European Union. At least we should mention one document, but after all, we have all these documents. What is lacking is really the instruments to pinpoint a particular, now we had the professor said, there's no research. And that's bad, because research is needed also for application or for of innovations, of new approaches and so on. So this is number two, the organization of the society. And number three, as soon as possible, we should change our career paths. Now it's vertical. You go to the kindergarten, you go to the school, you go to the work, 1, 2, 3, whatever, and retire. That's very vertical, which is wrong for today's challenges. It has to be horizontal. Have to work, go to let's say vocational training, because I should mention in European Union, by the Porto Initiative, for example, there should be 75% of the elderly population that will be part of vocational training by 2030, which is an enormous goal that we have to accomplish. Nowadays, we are far from that, and we do not have the established instruments, to actually do that. So I think we have everything, piece and beats and everything, but should put it into the same kind of vision, So that will be 3 takeaways, which we usually say to the students, have 3 takeaways, because people do not remember more than 3.
Thank you. So adding coalition building vision to the list. Јас би додал добрата комуникација, важна алатка која што е неопходна за да ги промениме работите, особено во општества како македонското. А и председателот одлично го спомена, политиката на страна и многу поголем фокус на вакви теми, многу поголем фокус на квалитетна дебата базирана на аргументи, а не базирана на политички разлики и препукувања. Разликите се здрави, меѓутоа само ако се основа за да се дојде до најдобрите решенија. Би се заблагодарил уште еднаш Регина, Роберт, Весна, Владо, на сите вас пред се за огромниот принос, за активното присуство и секако на организаторите Македонија 2025 и председателот, односно неговиот кабинет. Ви благодарам многу, уживајте во кафе пузата и се гледаме на вториот панел.
можност да се представам и да дискутираме на оваа тема. Како председател на Стартап Македонија, некој кој што активно работи во полето на развој на иновациите, стартапите и општо поттикнување на нивото на технологијата во земјата, особено ми е драго што председателот, како и Македонија 2025, ја ставија оваа агенда и го организираат овој настан, инаку многу добро како еден поклон за мојот денешен роден ден. Денес полнам 36 години. И веќе 10 години како ја развиваме стартап сцената. Беше на неколку пати спомната Стартап Македонија како организација која што функционира и го поддржува стартап екосистемот и мора да кажам дека направивме големи исчекори. Многу промени се направија во изминатите години, но секогаш е прашањето што можеме да направиме повеќе. И сакам еден фокус, ако може да го ставиме на оваа дискусија, да не биде што треба ние да се жалиме што немаме во оваа земја, туку што можеме повеќе да направиме, заради тоа што ако бидеме ставени како земја која што знае да кука и да се жали, може навистина да бидеме први во Европа. Сакаме да го смениме тоа и да дискутираме за промените кои што би требало да се случат, особено во делот на дигитализацијата, унапредувањето на образованието, кое што секако е еден од двигателите за Македонија да стане центар на технологијата во регионот. Во минатата година направивме во рамки на европската рамки на неделата на предприемништво посебен настан кој што се осврна во делот на образованието. И тоа образование кое што е страна на формално образование, дополнително vocational education, значи дополнителното образование, и оно кој што особено мене ми е драго е тоа lifelong learning, односно образованието што се случува во рамки на деловните кругови, како да го поттикнеме интрапредприемништвото или интрапренуршипот и да разгледуваме за методи со кои што ќе креираме знаења во младите за потребите на бизнес заедницата. Оттаму голема благодарност за сите оние говорници кои што се одзваа на поканата и се денес тука со нас. Би сакал да го поздравам господинот Славко Габер, кој што е професор по социологија на образование на Универзитетот во Љубљана и поранешен министер за образование, кој што кога прогуглував беше напишано дека еден од најистакнатите министри за образование не само во Словенија, туку во Европа, некаде така беше забележано со своите измени и политики кои што ги има, така да ќе сакам да се задржам на што е тоа кое што вие го имате работено. Господинот Блигор Бишев, кој што истакнат економист со големо искуство во делот на банкарскиот сектор и сега преку Стопанската комора делува во полето на иновации и унапредување на образованието. Благодарност до господјата Александра Накева Ружин, кој што доаѓа професор, како професорка, он професор на Универзитетот Американ Коледж Скопје, како и советник во Министерството за образование, за финанси, се извинувам. И секако тука го имаме господинот Менди Кюра, председател на Стопанската комора на Северно-Западна Македонија и успешен предприемач, основач на градежната компанија Тримилин. Кога го добив овој сетап, она што сватив е дека сите тука имаме барем по една шапка плюс, отколку само она што го работиме, што значи дека не може еднодимenzionално да се делува во креирањето на подобар екосистем. Дали тоа бил иновацијски, стартап, деловен, мора во неколку улоги да се ставиме за да може всеопфатно да се направат промените. Би сакал да започнем со едно прашање до господинот Габер, кој што, како што рековме, еден од поистакнатите професионалци во делот на политики за образование, како вие го гледате промената на пазарот на трудот и барањата што ги има деловниот сектор за постојано да се иновираат програмите за едукација со поддршка на државата. Значи, како државата треба постојано да иновира и што се прави за да може во случајот на Словенија да креирате економија, односно да креирате програми кои што би ја поддржале економијата на 21. век.
Thank you for the invitation, and sorry, while I'll probably not reach the standards put it in front of me. With your question, you've opened the basically Pandora box, and the discussion should take a lot of time to address the questions. One thing I'll try to say is that in maintaining economies, in developing economies, you don't need only innovation. You need also reproduction of the standards, of the knowledge, of the skills you already have here in this place and around the world. So speaking only about innovation is speaking just about one part of the story. It goes for economy and it goes for the societies, though it goes for education too. Solid, properly structured, properly financed education, science, and properly functioning society is a condition for thriving economy. A colleague from Sweden was telling something similar to us before. So it is a complex phenomenon we are addressing, while it is not only that labor market is changing, while societies are changing. If we read, for example, Reimagining Our Futures Together, UNESCO report, you'll see there that they directly saying to us, and they are leading experts in the work in this field, that reducing education only to the questions of labor market means damaging education. This is important to be able to accommodate to the changes on the market, labor market, but it's not the whole story. So, too frequently changing curricula is also not the panacea, is not the answer to the questions, not even to the questions of labor market. But we are, as human beings, not only wage laborers. We would like to thrive and lead our lives in number of sectors. And this is where education, at least in Europe, is going. Of course, innovation. Of course, market-oriented and all this, but not only that. Sorry for adding to the complexity, but when I was invited here, I've decided that I'm not just going to repeat mantra of neoliberal ideas.
Thank you for doing that. But then to be more specific, and I believe it was mentioned in the previous panel by the Swedish representative, that the government role is to enable. What is the government role in the process of education policies? Is it to enforce the top-down approach, or to listen from what the economy has to say?
It's not either or. If there is a government, if there is a Ministry of Education, they are supposed, of course, to listen what economy sector in narrower terms is needing what they say they need, yeah, and they are supposed to provide for. But knowing, being aware that this is not the only sector of life and the only sector of social entity, so they have to have broader picture than just listening, enabling, giving even money to the public money to the companies to accommodate labor force when this is needed would be my suggestion today, either in Slovenia or else in other countries for Macedonia. I'm not informed enough to say what they should do. This would be pretentious to such a degree that that would be inappropriate.
I will continue with Mr. Bishop on the activities as an, let's say, banker, economist for decades from now. You know how the economy is developing, and especially you see it from the perspective of the National Chamber of Commerce. What are the things that the companies can do in creating the policies, especially for education? Is there a force that, and how you are actually enforcing this need of the private sector to be financed by the government, or let's say, if something cannot be done with little money, it can be done with more? Do you agree in this premise, Mr. Bishop?
Okay, I will try to present few points. First of all, the concept of market value state that has a role only to sit on back seat and only the private sector generates the growth do not exist anymore in practice in any country, especially after 2008 and now after COVID. So in this respect, the new coin is entrepreneurial state. That means state that together with private business all the time sits on the front seat, and together they are de-risking risk for investment of private sector, also together investing a lot of money in research and development, and also prepare appropriate education for growth of private sector. But I would say that there is no panacea, that only education is important, and then once we are well educated, we have a growth. We know that it is known that in USA almost the largest giants in tech industry are developed by a person that do not have faculty. So in this respect, the question is, what really matters to have more dynamic economic growth and higher prosperity? And I agree with Mike that in almost 22 decades, the top 10 countries in performance of prosperity and economic growth were small countries. Even smaller than Macedonia, for example, Luxembourg. So the question is, what is, let's say, the key ingredient for well-being, for better prosperity? And thinking what is this ingredient, I saw the World Happiness Report for 2023 with figures for 2022. And actually, we even forgot that 10 years ago, United Nations Assembly adopted a view that measuring GDP per capita is not anymore important for well-being of citizens for a country, and investments, innovations, technology are not enough to grow. And they coined the term happiness index. And they said the countries where the happiness index is higher, they are more prosperous, they are more happier, and on long run achieve better results. And in these top 10 countries, for 2022 the report is published, are all small countries, and it is based on the questionnaire and opinion pool with the same methodology worldwide, 149 countries, and Macedonia has a position 89 with 517 score, and unfortunately we are behind all Western Balkans 6 countries. Serbia is 43rd with 520 index, Kosovo is 646. So in this respect, what are main ingredients for this index? First, how the citizens of the countries are feeling, whether they feel safe, whether there is a good and reliable healthcare system, where there is good education, and whether there are equal opportunities for everybody to promote, to have access to funds, access to school, and of course whether there is well-developed social support system. And with one word, what Aristotle is saying, eudaimonia. And in this respect, what of economists made regression analysis and then find really that between happiness index, economic growth, and prosperity of the country, really there is reliable correlation. And UN is planning from 2025 not to use anymore GDP as a measure for success of a country, but happiness index. And the question is how we in Macedonia can improve our happiness, our relationships among ourselves, and obviously it's not just government. Yes, policymakers have key role, but it's not sufficient. All of us has to give her or his own contribution, and in order to present that there are good cases that can encourage us, I will present you 4 cases for which all of us we will be proud. In addition to Mike Zafirovsky that was in Motorola, I will present you 4 other cases, not so known, well known, but some of them. In 2015, 2016, there was UNCTAD conference in Geneva, and it was devoted also innovation, startup growth. World Bank has presentation, and at some moment they said USA has Amazon, but Balkan region also has Amazon. It is group of Nina Angelos. The second, for me, excellent surprise was last year when I was in London, and I saw on the main square one cleaning van, and I was reading, it's impossible. It was produced by Braco Veles, hydrogen cleaning van, and now it's exported in 36 countries. And now 2 other examples for young generations to be proud, and I would start with one, not because I'm not remembering their names, not to make mistake. Nikola Velkovsky, Stefan Kotevsky, and Tomislav Jurukovsky. They prepared their graduate work on how to improve marketing tools on social media. They called it Hobbits, and they get the first reward of Reddit, $500,000 US. And the second example is 28 years old, Macedonian, Svetlana Korunova, Pixel Artificial Intelligence. Within a period of 1 month, she collected $1 million US dollars for searching consumer sales. So my message is, let's create enthusiasm, let's make our country more happier, and the results will be here. Thank you.
I'm glad that, okay, I switched to English. I'm glad that 3 out of the 4 examples that Mr. Bishop mentioned are actually startups. The Startup Macedonia is supporting from day one, and also part of the Startup of the Month initiative that we are doing every month. If any of you is here on Thursday, we'll have the celebration of another startup that is global story, air care, actually bringing know-how about the pollution all over the world. So I totally agree that we should be behind the success stories. We should applaud them. We should push them further and be more in the media, and this is why actually we are doing so much work with Startup Macedonia. But I will come back to you once more with the asking what the private sector can do with the new generation of entrepreneurs, and is the private sector interested in investing in these entrepreneurs that are now the front face of the ecosystem?
Of course, the private sector is interested, but as I said, usually startups are risky business, and probability to fail is 50%. And one of the terms that I used was de-risking policies between private and public sector. That means the role of the state currently should be also to reduce the risks of private sector. And in USA, even for big companies, currently the state is de-risking the investment. Some scheme of guaranteeing the investment in startup, and not only in startup, but also in all projects that are assessed that they are important for prosperity of the country, for accelerating the growth. And I believe that discussing, presenting arguments should be crucial, but we should know that this is impossible with 30% central government budget to GDP. That means it steadily has to come to 40% in order to have sufficient funds to support such schemes. Currently, Macedonian states is spending 2 to 3% on capital investment, which is of GDP, which is not sufficient for such a role of state. So we have to press the private and together the community to create consensus what role do we need. And I would present you another figure because there is sometimes not right presentation. Macedonia has flat tax from 2008, and usually everybody is saying, especially companies, flat rate of 10% is excellent. But in that period from 2008 to 2021, GDP growth was lower by 30 basis points in comparison with the period when there was progressive taxation. 2098, 2027. So if our goal is to have high economic growth, better prosperity, we really have to think where the social safety net can be delivered with full tax. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we're moving from what the needs are of the private sector to what the needs are of the private sector, but serviced by the educational system, and how the policies of, let's say, some of the interesting cases we have right now in Macedonia, Ms. Ruzhin, can you elaborate more? I know that there was a very interesting project on the dual education in getting some of the practices from other and more experienced ecosystems. Can you elaborate what was done as one of the successes from the Ministry of Education, and what should be done actually to service the private sector to be more innovative, having in mind that you have been exposed to the Swedish experiences for the past years?
Thank you, Igor. As you mentioned at the beginning in the introductory notes, luckily we were worn and we're still wearing many hats. And this gives us a comprehensive experience and different perspectives which can be deployed when needed, especially in discussing and thinking and changing information and changing ideas on complex topics such as sustainable economic growth, which at the same time would be risk. You touched upon a very important topic, and that's the education, and what the education can do for ensuring competitiveness of the businesses, and what it can do to help achieve this sustainable long-term growth. It's not only this year, but continues in the EU progress report on autumn settlement, but also in the joint conclusion on the financial and economic dialogue between the European Union and the Western Balkans and Turkey. It continues to be stated that the education outcomes in North Macedonia, not only often but more than often, do not meet the needs of the labor market, which contributes to sustainable unemployment levels, and also, and especially important, very high level of youth which are outside of the education system, outside of the training or inside of the training programs. This is a systemic problem as it is being regarded not only in Macedonia but also it is regarded as the European Union as one of the structural changes, one of the most important structural changes of the country, and is being regarded as number one when it comes to boosting competitiveness of the businesses and when it comes to enabling sustainable growth and economic positions. This has been the reason why the government over the past several years has been trying to accommodate the education system, to accommodate needs of the companies, to help the German association of North Macedonia, but also with the help of the Swiss government, to deploy a model which would be deployed in the country, but which would actually enable exactly the outcomes that we need. And this is creating students, youngsters, which are ready to be in the labor market, which possess the competences, the skills which are being needed by the companies, and also which have been developing the specializations for which they're open for positions in the market. We have started in 2007 to 2018, and slowly starting with 2 schools and 2 municipalities. Others are also interest nowadays to cover more than 225 schools, about 2,000 students, and we plan for the near future aiming to grow more. But maybe this is a good opportunity to speak about Switzerland, because also in the other panels we continuously keep on coming back on the issue whether a country which is small, which lacks enough natural resources, which has a complex geography and complex history as well, whether it has at all any withstanding position to develop and to rise faster prominence in the international economic market. And the fact that I'm drawing the experiences from Switzerland and from Sweden gives us the answer to that question, and that is yes. Especially Switzerland, because we heard from Regina in the first session that Switzerland is a small country that ranks continuously high in the competitiveness and innovation indices on a global level. For example, in 2019, there were 12 in Europe, second in Europe, and 5th in the world when it comes to innovation and competitiveness. And many on a global scene attribute the success of Switzerland to the vocational education system, which has been deployed in the country since 1933. So basically, nowadays it's one of the most appreciated and most quoted type of education in Switzerland. About 2/3 of young graduates are continuing in the dual education, compared to 1/3 that go to regular universities and for association programs. And this gives the possibility actually of the country to have always a wide, a substantial pool, talented young people who are especially skilled in what are the needs of the companies and the present the market conditions. In fact, that was the attempt of the government to try to accommodate that need, because the mismatch in skills and the ability that was constantly being put forward, not only by the European Commission, but also by the international donors, was one of the biggest obstacles for the development of the competitiveness and the strength of the businesses. We hear and we know sometimes from the statistical office that the unemployment rate is still about 14%. Basically, that should give the companies a very potent pool of people which will be ready and capable of undertaking open propositions, but in reality, it's often, if not always, happening the opposite. Companies are constantly complaining that they have difficulty in engaging employees, and even those employees that are being engaged, they are constantly need further training or retraining, because they do not possess the basic skills and competencies that are needed to immediately enter the labor market. So basically, the point of the vocational education and the program in North Macedonia, which I hope that will be given great attention, is exactly this partnership which requires both between the government, the private sector, and also the schools, allowing the government to strategically think about the direction towards which this program will be developed in the future, allowing the educational institutions, vocational schools to think about curriculum and how they can be best matching the needs of the private sector, whereas at the same time enabling and motivating companies to get engaged in this program by introducing enough apprenticeship positions and also supporting it with appropriate financial.
Do you think there's enough things done in the premises of R&D in the educational system that should serve the private sector? We mentioned before that there was nothing. The Vice Prime Minister mentioned there is 100 million to be distributed towards research institutions to support the private sector. Are we just big on words and there is no implementation done, or we really have some research done that is beneficial to the corporate sector?
See that the investments in research and development are understated. It might sound unorthodox, but in fact there have been millions of dollars which have been put into the education system for opening up laboratories, for equipping the laboratories, for engaging other type of equipment which is needed for supporting the development of the R&D in the education system. So there are always two sides to the coin. I would not say that the government, not only the past several years, but in the past 20 years, has not invested substantially, although there is always a question what is substantial. And it's very difficult to compare on this level with Sweden or with Switzerland. You mentioned at the beginning, if you cannot do something with money, you can do it with lots of money. It's different coming from Macedonia, coming from this region, and trying to compare ourselves with the percentages of GDP which needs to be or can be deployed or used in research and development, and compare it with Sweden, which has other levels of development of the human and infrastructural capital which is needed and which is already there for the years. However, there are certain things in the educational system that we can do with not so much money, and that would be digital education. It's something that I was expecting even to hear before during this panel, because it's not new, it has been there for ages, but the COVID pandemic has just exacerbated this crisis and facilitated and accelerated the use of digital technology in education. So basically the digital education, not many people, unfortunately in North Macedonia, understand that it's not only coming to deployment of digital technologies in education, but on the contrary, it's first and foremost building the digital capacities with the students, which are very much important from multiple aspects. First, what I discussed before, the mismatch on the labor market between the supply and the demand for digital competencies of workers, but also very important for the social, from the social point of view, because it helps bridge the digital divide between the less affluent and more affluent segments of the population, and to prevent future economic and social divisions. North Macedonia, unfortunately, before the COVID crisis, has done nothing in this regard. So the crisis got us completely unprepared. Nevertheless, and notwithstanding that on EU level, there have been so many different digital education action plans that have been adopted in the past. The European Union and the member states have invested heavily in the digital education. North Macedonia, unfortunately, did not have training back then, and was attempting to do that during the crisis. Of course, it was different experiences. It was all done in a tremendous rush, but we're trying to put everything together in a month or two so that we made all the education projects complete. But however, it's important for the society, it's important for the government to understand that this is not a process which should be put on hold. This is a process which should be taken care of. It's a process which we should all focus on, because this is the way how we can produce youngsters which are capable of finding their way in the labor market here in the region or anywhere in the world, because they become digitally native from the day they're born nowadays, but without the proper deployment of the digital technologies in the educational process, unfortunately they're lagging behind what peers not only in Sweden, Switzerland, but in all other countries in the European Union. And with that deficiency, I'm afraid that we cannot discuss about being competitive in terms of inflation, being competitive in terms of the business opening other markets abroad, and in general being able to support long-term and substantial economic growth. We're still about 5-6%, which Macedonia has seldomly witnessed in the past. So if the history can teach us ourselves is that we cannot expect different results, different outcomes by deploying the same tactics, the same strategies, and the same way of thinking. If we expect that
there is one, for all of you maybe unknown, but there is one influential person in the world of marketing called Gary Vaynerchuk, and there is something that he's multiple times mentioning: innovate or die. We have seen how many companies that were giants in their industries throughout the history has went out of existence because they were not innovative enough, not fast enough to implement the changes. And this definitely brings me to the question, до прашањето кој што го имам за господин Кюра. Колку компаниите кои што се дел од тебе, да тргнеме прво од вас како компанија Примилун, кој што не е толку, да речеме, се поистоветува со дигиталните технологии, но градежништвото од секогаш се менува. Колку компаниите мора да превземат, да направат таа дигитална трансформација, за навистина да бидат конкурентни во ова време, после ковидот, после измените во начинот на кој што се работи. Што вие превземавте како Стопанска комора, може пример и од работењето ваше на Примилун, во делот на дигиталната трансформација, за да ги подобрите процесите и ги најдете кадрите што се потребни?
Поздрава сите. Значи, ја ќе се вратам на назад, значи, после COVID-19 како криза, енергетиката и војната во Украина, значи има и освен лошата страна и добрата страна, дека не поучи да сватиме реалноста и да ги креираме политиките. Ние како комора веќе имаме назначено најважните работи што после кризата ги имаме определено како нашата платформа во делот на енергетиката, земјоделието и градежништвото, кои се најважните дејности кои мислиме дека после оваа криза ни дава до знаење дека треба да сме независни во овој дел. Над сите овие дејности, значи е многу важно во Македонија сега и дефицитот на кадарот во сите полиња, поготово на професионалната страна, каде што мислиме дека треба да се посветува повеќе внимание. Ние нормално, освен што прашавте за градежништво, мислиме и другите дејности, треба да имаме такви кадри што COVID-19 не научи дека и некои работи што се и во градежништвото и во другите полиња, значи треба да се работи онлайн, како што беше образованието, што се одбиваше настава на онлайн, па дел од некои дејности онлайн и то не проучи и не натера, значи да се посветиме на тој дел. Мислам дека образованието, Министерство за образование, ове сега сите чинители треба заедно да се соберат па да дадат допринос за кадар, да имаме професионален кадар. Во Македонија сега, за жал, има 14% невработени, меѓутоа тоа не е реална слика, поради тоа што ние како компанија веќе имаме голем проблем со ова работна сила и во тој дел заедно, значи бараме заедно со владата и ние како бизнес заедницата сме спремни да имаме повеќе работилници, повеќе семинари, повеќе организирани, да ги обучиме кадрите кои ни се потребни, кои се дефицитарни во Македонија. Нормално тука имаме и голем значи конкуренција од државите кои се силни повеќе од нашата држава, каде што и тие кадри што ги инвестираме ние на таа обука веќе за жал бегат од Македонија. Меѓутоа треба да се најде некој начин да се донесе некој закон кој тие кадар што бизнес заедницата ќе вложи за нив да останат барем привремено некоја година тука да работат за истите компании кои вложуваат за тие кадри. Значи, ние мислиме дека и образованието треба да претрпи реформи во делот на професионалниот кадар, поради што, за жал, кај нас законот облигативен за средно училиште не дава многу добри резултати, поради тоа што тие сите се насочат без да ги селекционираме кадрите од почетокот 8 одделение, 9 одделение сега што е. Значи да ги посочиме на кадар кои што се потребни за бизнес заедницата и како што и децата имат волја за такво нешто. Значи во тој дел треба да се работи, да се направат големи реформи во образованието. Реков и напред, значи сите чинители, сите заедно да правиме нешто. Нормално дека во овој дел паралелно треба да се работи за ова современата технологија, кај што кадрите да се поспремни, поажурни и подобри за бизнес заедница.
Имавме една мала дискусија со господин Габер. I'll switch to English. So, you mentioned Slovenia has the same problems. It's not like we are much different in the terms of capacity and problem with talent. All over Europe, people are moving away. There is the brain drain happening. How do you keep the talent inside? And what are some of the policies that can make them be more entrepreneurial? From early days, what we mentioned is that to even start talking about starting a business in the last year of university is too late. You should be talking about that much earlier, get the entrepreneurial thinking even in high school. But coming back to the brain drain and how to maintain the workforce innovative, what is some of the policies that you have done in Slovenia specifically, and that can be, let's say, as a closing remark to the audience, that you would advise that we could do? I know it's very, very sensitive, but I would like to hear from your side.
Actually, the idea of mismatch is one of the prominent ideologies of European Union, and is spreading around rapidly with a lot of money invested with not much of the result. This one should be something one should be aware. I've learned this in painful way. We were investing huge amounts of money in hospitality education, while Slovenia is dependent on this tourism and you have very expensive schools if they are properly equipped and maintained in this area. What has happened, and one of the ministers of industry realized one day in June in 1 year, 2 years ago in Slovenia, Austrian employers were waiting in front of our schools for the people with new degrees. Yeah? What they were offering to them, 500 or 700 euros more, higher salaries and accommodation if they move in Austria. Yeah? It is not only Austria doing this. To a degree, our companies are doing similar things. One should be aware that the most promising youngsters are scanned around. Now we have in Slovenia your Emilia Stojmenova. She is our Minister for Digitalization. Mind the fact. How came that she is there? Our heads of the best upper secondary gymnasium schools were traveling around years ago in former Yugoslavia countries, and they've spotted also amongst others Emilia. She came there after primary education in gymnasium, and then she went all the way up through excellent international baccalaureate school financed by the state. Public funds were in. Now we are lucky enough that we have her where she is. So this is something which is going on. Another example, our youngsters is in the Cambridge Lab for Artificial Intelligence, the top hub in Europe dealing with the edge research. She's from Slovengradas. But what we are trying to do, and this is kind of suggestion, at least our practice, what we are doing, we've invited her back to Josef Stefan Institute, and she's working now with our people, staying still there, keeping position at Cambridge Institute, while we don't have such a hub as they have. If she wants to be amongst the top researchers in this field, she should stay there. And she's coming for a few months each year in Slovenia. So it's not brain drain if it is going, if this is brain circulation. This is one of the suggestions I believe is something valuable. And while I'm speaking about innovation now, social innovation, for Slovenia at least, as crucial as innovations in industry. EU is going to invest huge amounts of money in social innovations. Why? We don't have problems only with what we are discussing here. We have, and as far as I can dare to understand Macedonian situation, we have huge challenges which are also in this sector of being able to cooperate, having policies in place that are longer lasting oriented and so on. All this is what we are facing, and so I believe, at least for Slovenia, that we have to invest heavily in social innovations too.
This kind of resonates to kind of mentioning public sector innovation, that it needs to reinvent itself in order to serve with the help of social businesses.
Unfortunately, I'm a sociologist, yes, and yes, also, without strong public sector, there is no thriving economy. But saying social innovations, I mean not only sectors, not far from political spectrum only. How do we organize our types of life in civil society? How do we manage to go in local communities with each other? What are our cooperations with education and so on and so forth, all the way up to how European Union you are aspiring to be part of is going to thrive? Those are all huge questions. We can lose even planet, you know. That's serious is this business.
Since we are short in time, I would really like the rest of the panelists to kind of close with a remark towards the audience on certain topics. I would like Mr. Bishop to just mention one thing before we continue, that for the first time this year, North Macedonian startups received more funding from private investors than from the government. And this is positive from one way, but it's also what can be done more, meaning inclusion of the corporates and the private sector even more to drive the innovation activities. And in this direction, definitely we're open for discussion how the government should enable us to do more. But I would like to kind of nudge you in the direction of how the companies can innovate through the young minds and incorporate them, because if they leave, they will leave to work for somewhere else. If they work with them now, here, they can stay and create companies like the ones that you mentioned. So what would be kind of the last remark you would say that from a position of economist and a position from somebody in the association of the Chamber of Commerce, you will do in the direction of support of innovation?
I would try to be quick. First of all, even globally, it is in last decade and in the coming period, it is predicted that capital will be abundant. What will lack skilled labor force, talent, in order to grow. From that point of view, such waves are also felt in Macedonia. So today, to have a good project, it's not a question whether you will get financial means to be financed. Startups are specific issue because the risk is high there. But even in such situation, good example is Macedonian Fund for Innovation and Development. Also in Chamber of Commerce we are planning, and we started with this, with startups, training, mentorship, and at the end conference within the Chamber of Commerce where business community also can fund together with the state and filter some projects. Also, as I mentioned, some guarantee scheme to reduce the risks. Also, from the point of view for maintaining the talent in the countries, small economies are specific from the point of view, and not only small, but even big. We have a dream, and you like to be in the top research institute, for example, even in Slovenia, our colleague mentioned that to be at Harvard, Cambridge, is more prestigious than to be in Uganda. So we cannot substitute this, but the question is how to create a balance, and they find the balance. The question is how Macedonia to find a balance and to become regionally competitive, to become regional hub, and also to use current platforms. For example, it was mentioned that now the average salary for IT industry is 1,500 euros. Average salary in Germany is 2,200 euros. So imagine to earn German salary and to spend it in Macedonia or in this region. So sometimes we should perceive that this is our advantage. But we must create all the environment and, as I mentioned, entrepreneurial state. Innovations are key, and I have the last figure for 2018. For research and development, Macedonian budget was 0.04% of GDP. It's nothing, negligible. It must be at least 20, 30 times more. So in this respect, how to say, we must reach, and I think this government, together with Chamber of Commerce, started discussions, and Ministry of Finance, definitely, and we made the first round debate for what kind of taxes and public expenditures do we like. And this is not stopped. It is long-term reform that we have to debate. We must create a system from one side that supports research development, but on the other system that also generates funds, how to do it. And definitely to be more self-confident, to be more happier, to create, I would say, rational enthusiasm, because irrational enthusiasm is bad as well, and to try to move to offer prosperity for a young generation, but movement of labor force will continue. That's positive trend, and we should not be afraid of that.
Mr. Bishop, so we touched a lot of points, and we'll definitely put them as remarks to the team of the President, Pendarovsky, to kind of summarize everything that we have said. So just to finalize, I would like very shortly for Ms. Nateva Ruzin and Mr. Kya to give remarks on their topics and what we maybe missed in this discussion today that should be addressed on the topic. But I would very much point to being very short.
We need to be short and concise and cover what is missed. Maybe I will discuss about the ingredients which has been the base and the key to success for many nations in Western Europe, especially in the countries. What I haven't mentioned before so far is that I've been honored to serve as Macedonian ambassador to Sweden for 4 years. And once you serve your time in Sweden or any other Nordic country, you're in a way permanently damaged. Damaged in a sense that you continue viewing the people, relationships, phenomena through the lenses of what will learn to be the most important and most basic things, and that's trust and partnership. So if I have to give one, if I have to leave this discussion in one note, it would be that these people collect the government, the academia, the private sector. There needs to be a way to build trust, to build the support, and to build and to maintain partnership, because this is the only way how we can move forward, how we can support each other, and be able with scarce resources, which unfortunately are not going to come in abundance in the future, but with these scarce resources, to use them wisely, to use them efficiently and effectively in order to achieve the best possible outcomes.
Being So,
сигурно јас мислам дека треба да имате еден долгорочен проект и долгорочен план под покровителство на владата, односно Министерство за образование, Министерство за труд и социјална политика и со бизнес заедницата, со предлозите нивни или наши, кои заедно би ги обучеле кадрите кои треба да остане тука. Ние знаеме дека не можеме да стигнеме целосно да се запира тој извид, меѓутоа имаме можности со нашите предлози, со нашите можности. Заедно сите чинители можда ќе постигнеме нешто повеќе него што е сега во моментот, кој е стварно во многу лоша состојба целата бизнес заедницата по однос на кадрите во професионалните кадри, зборувам во Македонија. Мислам дека може да се направи повеќе, сите заедно можеме повеќе. Благодарам.
како едно само последно дека инпутот од секој од нас е дефинитивно потребен за да се направи промената. Јас би сакал да дадам само едно прашање, видов имаше рака дигната за претходно и да може да завршиме дискусијата. Мислам, Александар сакаше да каже многу повеќе сакам од приватниот сектор, како што и во другите земји сушност е застапено, да бизнисот го движи иноватискиот сектор, истражувањето спрема академијата, додека државата да биде како еден вид на енеблер, поддржувач на потребите на приватниот сектор и секако креирање на политики кои што ќе ги произведат кадрите од потребата на приватниот сектор и на тој начин единствено само би сакал да додадам креирање на продукти, односно компании со продукти со додадена вредност, како што господинот Бишев се изненадил од гледањето на едно решение од брако кој што е изградено, значи тоа е додадена вредност, да не продаваме како што било порано пиперки, да продаваме ајвар, во случајот на да продаваме да изградиме решенија, софтвер за некој друг, да градиме собствени решенија тука кои што ќе направат Македонија на вистина земја во која што ќе се креира вредност и таа вредност тука ќе се троши од луѓето кои што ќе се вклучени. Благодарам многу на сите што се вклучиме. Thank you very much everyone for joining.